to looking for diversity DEI jobs, internships, and organizations. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So hi, my name is Kaylee. I am a graduate student intern at the USC Career Center as a career engagement intern. And I will be moderating for today's panelist. And I will go ahead and pass it on to the panelists. If you can please introduce yourselves, your name, pronouns, year, and your major.
Hi everyone. So my name is Alex Flores, she, her pronouns. I am a second year, but I am going to be here for a long time since I am doing a PDP program, getting my master's at the same time, and then hopefully coming back for a PhD. And I am in the PR and communication space.
Hello, good morning everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Sai. I'm a graduate intern at the USC Career Center. I'm an international student, career engagement graduate intern. I'm currently pursuing a master's in communication management also with a concentration in entertainment, marketing, and research. So, nice to meet you all. And he, him pronouns.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily Quintanilla. I am a senior, my pronouns are she, her, and I am studying English with a minor in cinematic arts.
Okay, thank you all for introducing yourself. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with the questions. So the first question is, what do you look for in an organization when applying to internships and jobs? So whoever wants to start first.
Yeah, I can go ahead and start. Something I predominantly look for, in particular within my industry, is, I guess, a good environment. I know that I'm going to be in a safe environment. I know that I can look to the left or to the right and see other people that look like me. Diversity really matters to me, in particular when it comes to working in corporate spaces. I know that in like a more creative field, I'm going to get everyone of all kinds of fields. So when it comes to more corporate space, I'm used to seeing one particular face in there. And so I guess another thing that really is that kind of support system is that I know that if I'm looking for an internship with an organization, that once it's over, I won't just be ghosted. I'm going to have that support and the mutual communication with that company.
Thank you, Alex. You can popcorn it to me. I think what I look mostly in organizations are like the kind of growth opportunities I can have in the organization. And like Alex mentioned, also the team and the collaborative environment that exists in the organization. And the other thing I most times also think about is the the impact of my work. Like, what's the kind of impact I'm making? Is it just task based? Is it just taking instructions and running with things, or is it more like taking charge of things? So those are like the three things which I normally look at when I'm looking into an internship or a job. So just trying to understand the impact of my work. How would I impact the organization in a larger sense? So that's something I look at, and I'll pop on it to Emily.
No, I think those are really, really good points. For me, it's like something more similar to Alex, where like since I'm graduating in May, I'm looking at more entry-level positions or like internship opportunities. Like I really am looking for like a place that is willing to like collaborate with me, mentor me in a way, and a place that has a lot of learning opportunities. Since I'm interested in mostly doing like things in the publishing industry, it's an industry that requires a lot of knowing people and having the right network, which is something that I don't feel like I have because I'm like a first generation student. Nobody that I know works in the publishing industry. So especially for entry-level positions, I'm like really interested in having opportunities to work with my supervisors to get that mentorship.
Thank you all for sharing. So we do hear a lot of like students talk about like having like safe environment, like having a support system, as well as like a lot of like growth opportunities that they want to have an impact. And I know Emily did mention about like collaborating and mentoring. So that's something that a lot of students want to look for when it comes to applying to internships and jobs. So thank you for sharing. So we're going on with the second question. So how do you feel about organizations that have specific diversity opportunities or leadership programs, which is positively or it can be negatively?
I kind of, oh, sorry. I can,
You
because
can go.
it kind of like shoots off of like what I was talking about, like learning opportunities. I feel like it is a positive thing because I feel like these programs allow you to sort of expand your knowledge about things. And I feel like it also shows a lot about the company that there's intentionality behind what they're doing. You know, they're trying to make it a more inclusive space and they're making formal initiatives. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I have the same kind of feeling as Emily. I have had the opportunity to work in or to do internships in companies that I specifically got recruited in when it comes to diversity, and then companies that I did not necessarily apply for my own program. So one of my favorite internships, and I will say this to a lot of people, has always been the one that I did, particularly in the LA Times. It let me grow a lot. And I was able to kind of see familiar faces as me. One that I got on my own merit, I guess you would kind of say, and I didn't apply with a specific program, was through Chase Banking. And definitely once I left that kind of like DEI space, it felt a little isolating. It felt like I was solely a diversity hire. And I didn't want to feel like that in particular, but I have a really big positive outlook at these like leadership programs that particularly focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, in particularly when it comes to corporate spaces, because I was not, or people of color aren't fairly represented, or there is no true like gateway for me to get into them. Because as Emily said, there are a lot of like knowledge base. If you know someone, you'll probably get a job there. And I feel like this makes a good effort and good ties to kind of get other students and get different perspectives into the table.
Yeah, I also agree with both of them. I think it's really good when organizations have the DEI programs, because it's the organizations coming out and saying, "Here, guys, we're trying to like do or like cater to like the multicultural market like that exists in the US, or like how there's so many multiple ethnicities and multiple groups of people today that we can't reach everyone with a single message. We can't hit, I mean, yeah, basically, for better communication and like basically saying, okay, we see you and we want to do this because we think this is the future. So I genuinely appreciate all the DEI programs that any organization runs.
Thank you for sharing. So I hear that a lot of you had a positivity impact when it comes to DI spaces, including like programs, organizations that allow you to expand more knowledge and also to have like a better communication when it comes to working in these spaces. So thank you all for sharing. We're going to go on to the third question. So the third question is, what recommendation do you have for organizations that are hoping to increase access to underrepresented students?
I have more like since my industry is a lot of unpaid internships, I would suggest like making a recommendation of like having like easing financial barriers for students, because I know like people that come from low-income families, or they can't afford to be in the industry that they want to be in because all these entry-level positions present a financial barrier. So that was one thing. I know like I wouldn't be able to do some of my internships if I didn't have help from somebody else. And also, if you want to like increase access to underrepresented students, going directly to organizations on campus that are tailored for underrepresented students. So we like at USC have like the cultural centers or all of our student equity and inclusion programs. I think those are really good places to start recruiting students, or even just having information panels just so they know more about what your company culture is like, and like who you're looking to recruit in the first place.
I think I had something similar to Emily as well. I think we have something called Trojan Talks at USC, so I think that's a good place for employers to probably come down and say, we want to learn more about diverse cultures. We want to like tell you about our company culture, and then like see how we can like form a fruitful collaboration. So I think that's a good place to probably start at the USC Trojan Talks, like Emily was mentioning, and but also like along with having these programs, I think really being consistent with them is another important thing. I feel like doing it a year and like maybe calling it back the next year, I don't think is probably viable. So if it's consistent and if it's running every year after year, I think that kind of also builds trust within like the first gen student camps or like any of the other student groups. So yeah, I would say being consistent and like trying to communicate the organization's principles, visions, missions, and see how they match up for a fruitful collaboration with diverse groups of students.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with what Emily and my other panelists said. A big thing of mine is going to be more towards put your money where your mouth is. If you're trying to create these programs, if you're trying to create a space specifically for equity and inclusion, have the funding. I personally like I can't afford a unpaid internship over the summer. I have bills to pay. I tell students we were all broke college students at one point. I'm like, imagine what it's like being first gen. Imagine what it's like not having that backing. So put your money where your mouth is and definitely pay your interns. I think a big lesson that I learned, particularly within my program, is that my work isn't free. At the end of the day, I came up with those ideas and I deserve to get compensation for that. And definitely being able to like create those spaces where we can invite students again, where we can have this sort of like bigger equity and inclusion initiative rather than just letting it be a starting off point for something bigger within a company.
Thank you all for sharing. So just tying into what you all have said. So like, I know you all have mentioned like easing financial barriers when it comes from like low income, underrepresented students, like financial barriers, and also increasing access, especially like when it comes to like fundings for unpaid internship. So just as all you had mentioned that, so going into tying into that like question that I previously asked, for organizations in the beginning stages, what advice can you offer for engaging with underrepresented students?
In particular, for companies that are starting off, one big piece of advice that I would give is definitely when it comes to like a bigger company, a more established company, there is less ties, I would say. When it comes to smaller companies, I've worked with them before. You have more access to people, right? So I can directly either talk to a CEO, I can talk to the COO. I have more access to higher ups than I would normally have within a big corporate space. Definitely taking ideas into account, remembering or at least sharing with the people that you're like trying to hire that this is still a learning phase for a lot of them. You know, you're still a young company. There's still a lot to learn within either your company culture that's not like 100% figured out, or we don't necessarily know what we can offer at the moment, but we know that we want to cater or we want to open up the spaces for students in diverse spaces. We know that we want to help you out and we want to grow with you instead of just using your ideas for us to grow alone.
I also wanted to say, I think one thing that I really appreciate is like also having a diverse set of recruiters, like people that look like me in the recruiting process, because first of all, just like eases me that I can see myself in that company. And also I feel more open to asking questions about what it's like to work there because I know that they share similar experiences to myself. And I think it makes it easier for me to learn about the company in the first place.
Yeah, I think my advice is kind of like generic, but it's like try and listen to understand and not to respond, I would say, like in the beginning stages, especially for small companies, because to actually know what the students are expecting, you probably have to just understand what they're saying first. So just actively listening to like what the requirements are, what are they are looking for. And like Alex was mentioning, just fostering a culture of learning within the organization would be really good for students because that builds more confidence within them and they know they'll be okay if they make a mistake. It's not the end of everything. So maybe like, yeah, the fostering the environment of learning and like letting them know that making a mistake is okay. And then, yeah, something like that.
Okay, so I really agree with what you all said. Like, I believe also that we need like a diverse set of recruiters. So I think so that way we don't also feel excluded. So I really like the idea of what you all said, especially accessing to people in the higher ups who also who should also take ideas into account when sharing with others as well. So I do appreciate you all for sharing that. And then going on to the fourth question. So what questions about your identity or diversity initiatives do you want to ask employers but don't?
A big one now that affirmative action is gone in, well, it's been gone for a while, but now that it's gone at like a national level, sort of when I'm applying to these DEI scholarships, are you looking for a space for me to kind of like explain my challenges? Am I being hired solely on the basis that, you know, in like my example in particular, a first gen American Hispanic like trans woman? I'm like, am I being hired directly because of that? Or is it playing a factor into my hiring position? I know that having conversations with a lot of students, particularly within that space, that's a big question that comes up. Like, how much does diversity matter within these programs? You know, I know they're hiring specifically for diversity, but is there someone that's more diverse than me that's going to get the position? Is there someone less diverse than me that's going to get the position? Questions like that are usually the ones that a lot of students like have expressed to me in particular.
I think I am an international student, so that's my diversity. I come from India, which is completely a different culture. So yeah, my question is always asking about if they sponsor international students or not, which I don't ask generally because I don't want to end the call there most times. So, but it would be actually nicer if employers like told us beforehand, like which they are doing lately a lot more than before, which is nice because we don't want to like put in a lot of time and effort into something which we know at the end of it we just hear a no because we're an international student. So I think just like being upfront about it, being upfront about like whether we hire international students or not, whether we sponsor international students or not, in the beginning of the conversation would really be, I think, helpful for both the employers and the students as well.
For me, I definitely always tend to like want to ask about like how just like general workplace environment and like how I want to gauge like the intentionality behind like how the organization cultivates like their community. Like, are they beyond like diversity initiatives? How do people within the organization interact with each other? Are there specific events that the organization throws to cultivate community or things like that? Like, just because, again, like, because I'm looking for mentorship and collaboration, like those things are important to me.
Thank you all for sharing. So as you all mentioned about, you know, identities playing a big factor when it comes to asking questions about like diversity matters or as well as like inviting international students, working in like in an environment where you feel like events should take like cultivative diversity initiatives and community. So as you all have mentioned that, so a following question when I asked about the previous question, it would be what should employers be addressing on their website or in Trojan Talks so that you do not have to ask these questions?
I feel like if an organization can clearly have like a page, like a separate page on their website for like all the DEI efforts they're putting in and the kind of like roles that diverse students are hired into and like the kind of responsibilities they carry out. I think pretty much like a job description, right? Like just understanding what people are actually doing in these roles would probably give me a lot more idea and confidence about like, okay, I should probably look into this because now I know, okay, what are they doing in their day-to-day activities? What's the impact they're creating at their organization? So I think having a dedicated page to the DEI efforts and then having what people are doing within that space, I think would be really good to like know.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That was exactly what I was going to say. Definitely the websites were the first thing I look for when I'm looking at an organization. So a dedicated web page is perfect.
I agree. I have to third that. Definitely transparency within a lot of these processes, in particular once I start the recruiting process. How long will it be until I hear something back? Is there like a particular time frame we're looking at? How many roles are open? Like ideally, what does the position look like in your company's words versus how I may take that? Definitely that transparency is going to matter a lot to me.
Yeah, so I definitely agree when you all had addressed about these kinds of internships or roles. So I do hear more about like having like a job description where you actually want to hear about more about the roles, like the impact of the organization, as well as like hearing different time frames, like when you're going to hear back. As well as you do want to have transparency. You know, that's something that a lot of students want to hear, as well as like how many roles or positions are open when it comes to applying to these positions. So going on to the fifth question. So when you are employed at an organization, what makes you feel supported and how do you feel valued?
Yeah, I feel like I've already mentioned, I think I will really feel valued, but when I can, again, the transparency, right? When I can really see what's the impact I'm making. Like say, for example, if I'm working within marketing, then see like the engagement rates or like whatever I see, I should like know about the data just to understand, okay, this is the kind of work I'm doing. This is what I'm contributing to the organization in a larger sense and how it ties back to all the other cross-functional teams. So just like having those team meetings, having that collaborative environment, and then like having a good chat with like someone from a cross-functional team, I think would be a very supportive environment, right? Because it's not just I get to do what I'm doing, but I also get to understand the other parts of the organization, how the organization functions in the entire like space. So yeah, that's something I probably team meetings, team lunches, like having those social gatherings, I think also will really like help support, especially in the early stages of your career. And also, I forgot to mention about learning from peers. That's another thing we always speak about, right? Like learning from your colleagues, learning from your like manager, teammate, everyone. I think the social gathering space will really like help loosen up ourselves and then like learn a lot more about people, about the work they do, and like how both of yours work like can contribute to the organization's cause. So, yeah.
Definitely. I think a really big piece for me is going to be this sort of having the faith in me that you hired me and that I can do the job, but also when I ask for help to get feasible help back, right? To get that space where I can ask questions and not feel like I'm going to be ridiculed or sort of being like, oh, you don't know that. I say I don't have a lot of experience. A lot of students may not have a lot of experience. So like that kind of environment where like I have an understanding of what I'm doing, but I can feel safe enough to ask questions is something that I really valued in my experience.
I totally agree with that. Like I'm a person that asks a lot of questions. So definitely if my supervisor and I are like have great communication, I immediately feel like I'm being supported. Also just like having team check-ins, like Sai was saying, with like either the whole team or just the supervisor. I think check-ins are a very helpful way to just like have a space to express any concern, or my supervisor can tell me what I'm doing well. It just brings a lot more like intention to like it's a formal way of expressing, oh, you're doing great, or oh, let's work on this. How can I help you?
Thank you all for sharing. So I do hear a lot of like team meetings. Like I think it's very important to feel supported when you have team meetings because you do want to check in with your supervisors to see how you're doing. And I think it's very important to also have like social gathering as well, just to get to know your peers. So I think that's very important. And also a place to ask questions. I definitely agree with that as well. Like, like you don't want to feel excluded and not feel like, oh, like this is not a place to ask questions, because I feel like when you come into these spaces, I think it's very important to ask questions. So that way, like you're not doing any mistakes. I think it's a learning process as well. So I definitely do agree with that. And going on with the sixth question is, what is the most frustrating aspect of the recruiting process when seeking a job or internship? Is there anything you wish recruiters knew that you would enhance the student recruitment process?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start. So, my primary role at the Career Center is I work a lot with students. So, I hear students' daily struggles. I hear what it is like for a lot of students to, like, especially now that it's internship season, to want to go and do that. A big thing of mine is communication. A lot of employers will not keep in contact with students, and I say if you're trying to foster a healthy relationship, particularly a professional relationship with a lot of students, it's treating them like you would a professional. So having communication with them, saying, "Oh, at the moment we don't have an answer." Or we're currently looking at XYZ profiles. We should be getting back to you in like 6 business days. Something like that will like completely like suffice students so that a lot of them come to me and they're like, "Oh my God, is it okay if I check in? Oh, can I like send an email? Will it look like completely unprofessional of me?" Like creating that safe space and sort of like that communication with the student would definitely lead to them feeling a lot more secure within that internship.
Yeah, I agree with Alex. I think communication is one of the biggest things that you should be focused at. It's just like giving a respect you give to a general professional. It's similar to like what you should do with a student as well, right? Because if someone's putting in hours of work just to apply to this job, I think we at least deserve a response, either be it yes or no. So I just feel I have a very yeah, I don't like people or organizations who just don't respond at all after you apply to a job. Like at least tell me no, you're not moving to the next round. Like that's good. Like and now I know okay, I was not the right fit. Couldn't do it, so I can like move on and look at other organizations. But like I applied for a Coke internship and I still not received anything for like 3 months now. Like no yes, no no, like nothing. So that's not fair on our part. Like I spent 4 hours on that application. So so yeah, just like communicating with us if I've moved to the next round or communicating to me just saying you're not the right fit, I think will really be helpful. And yeah, it's just respecting my time and effort, I believe.
I totally agree with everything that was said. I'm in the process of applying for jobs, and it definitely feels like I'm just throwing things out into the universe, and I never hear back from anywhere. So I feel like there's definitely a craving to humanize the process in a way, hearing back from people, even just since like, I don't want to reiterate everything that's been said, but like I would even appreciate like having more like either in person or virtual events where I can talk to somebody about the position before I apply, just because, like nowadays you're just scrolling on LinkedIn to look for jobs, but it's not the most efficient way to get a sense of the company, what the company stands for, even though like, right, I can look at the website. I would love to talk to a recruiter about it more. And that way I have a contact when I apply, I have this person in mind, like, oh, maybe they'll be the ones to get back to me. Like I said before, I'm first gen, so I don't have a lot of contacts in my industry. So even just having a person to ask questions before I apply would really help, like ease my tension throughout the whole recruiting process.
So I do hear a lot of you mention about like communication is key when it comes to securing like internships, full-time positions, or even part-time positions. So I do definitely agree with that as well. Like, I think it's very important for employers to to email students, to communicate with them when it comes to these kinds of jobs or internship that they put in terms of like their time and effort. So I think it's very important to hear back, even if your application didn't move forward, or even if you did get accepted into an interview. I think it's very important to have communication. And then just tying into what Emily had mentioned, like in person and in virtual events, I think it's very important to establish that connection with recruiters, or like also as well as communicating with them to see how the hiring process looks like. So I do definitely agree with that. So moving forward with our next question. So what equity and inclusion initiatives would exist at your ideal organization?
I kind of was thinking about like DEI training for the whole organization, because I know like a lot of the younger generation is like well versed in different things that are going on in the world, but I feel like maybe the older generations don't have the same awareness of it. So I just like everyone being on the same page. So I feel like ongoing DEI training would really show me that the organization is um, trying to better themselves, like making sure everyone has correct like language, behavior, attitudes, and that expectations are very clear from the get-go.
I 100% agree with Emily. To me, it's going to be not necessarily DEI training in terms of we're going to do modules today. It's going to be DEI training where we can humanize people, where we can like directly like hear people's stories direct and what they've had to deal with in the workspace. And owning up to mistakes to me is really important. If you've made a mistake, that's fine. We're all human. At the end of the day, what makes the company are the people working at the company, not necessarily like the big reputation the company has built. So to me, it's really important that we're able to humanize these stories and accept them as something that was once a part of this company, but now we're trying our best to foster in a new safe environment and a new home where we can all get similar experiences out of it, where we can all get that same respect out of it, and we can learn about each other's struggles and not weaponize them, but more accept them as a part of something that happened.
Yeah, I've nothing new to add. It's just what Emily said. I think ongoing DI training sounds like a brilliant idea, actually. It's just because everyone's on the same page. Everyone's like learning about it. Whoever's coming in know about it. So yeah, I vote for ongoing DI training.
So I do hear a lot of you have mentioned about the eye training is very important when it comes to like ongoing DI training when it comes to organizations, or as well as like hearing people's story, because you do want to hear what other people went through, as well as like owning up mistakes. I think it's okay to make mistakes, but also owning up to it is very important as well. So thank you all for sharing that. So going on to our next question is, as campus leaders, how do you create a sense of belonging and inclusion within your student groups on campus?
I am part of the USC Hellenes, so we are like the official hosts of USC. So we just like better the community through like volunteering or service projects. We're a non-gendered organization, so we accept everybody in the organization. And one of our pillars is actually diversity, equity, and inclusion. So through events of the DEI pillar, we're really committed to educating ourselves on different situations happening in the world, or different gender identities or sexualities, and just learning how to be the best allies, or learning how to empower other people so we can be examples on and off campus. So that's how we sort of encourage inclusivity in USC.
I think mine comes from the current job I'm doing because I'm an international student, career engagement, graduate intern, like I mentioned. So my sense of belonging really comes from advising international students about resumes, jobs, cover letters, internships, how we can like truly make use of the global perspective that we get like from all around the world. So like what kind of experiences we had, what kind of cultures we come from, what it means to be in the US, and like I always believe international students start from -50. Like if everyone else is starting from zero, we're starting from -50. We're already traveling all the way here, like leaving our families and everyone back home and just coming here for like a good education and a quality life. So I always believe when I'm telling the international, when I'm advising international students, I always talk about how we have to really embrace our unique identity and like talk more about it and like really learn how to communicate your strengths and like your culture or like your diversity and what you bring to the table. And I really believe we live in a truly global world today. So it's not like you can probably work anywhere like right now. So it's become that global because of the technology and like all the social media or like even pandemic. After the pandemic, I feel we have become a truly global world. So I always tell students that try and focus on like really strengthening how you can communicate what to bring to the table, like what why you are different. So I think that's how I get my sense of belonging at USC.
Definitely. I belong to a lot of different diverse spaces where I've been able to like really say I've been able to work with a lot of people of different life paths, and something as simple as active listening, something as simple as actually hearing and understanding and trying, even though I say you may not fully comprehend the story, but you understand what's there and you understand what this person has gone through, and opening up the space to have sometimes uncomfortable conversations, sometimes having a space where you can ask questions if you don't fully understand. Things like that really make a really great diverse space. And I think that's something that as simple as, asking more clarifying questions, something as simple as not judging people before you hear their story, to me is super important. And that really creates a really safe and nurturing environment, not only for it creates not only a safe space but a brave space where people can feel free to share, and you know that it's not going to leave the room if the person feels uncomfortable or they're not going to be judged on that.
So I hear a lot of like sense of belonging in terms of like educating ourselves to empower others as well as like be an example for that as a leader, and also like embracing our identities, like our cultures, where we come from, which is very important. And I know like we also talked about like active listening, understanding, and make those uncomfortable conversations. So I do appreciate for you all sharing that. And we're going into our last question. So, how would you like for employers to engage with students on campus? How do you like to receive information about opportunities from employers?
Yeah, I would say the dedicated page that we spoke about for DEI efforts is a good place to start for sure. Like the kind of opportunities that the organization is presenting for students. And on campus, I would say, like we already spoke about again, the Trojan Talks is a good place because the organization just gets to talk about the organization, what they believe in, why they want to work with diverse students. I think is also an important thing that organizations should talk about. So, like, what's their goal with their DEI efforts. So that's Trojan Talks is a good place. And also career fairs obviously is another good place where you can have like brochures about your DEI programs, just so that I can like students can take a look at them, and then like if they're really interested in it, can talk more about those programs directly with the like one of the representatives from the organization. So that in-person time is like as valuable as it can get. So yeah, career fairs and Trojan Talks, and yeah, career fairs and Trojan Talks. That's a good place.
Definitely. I think that in a perfect world, a more like non-streamlined process where we can really like, get to know the student before. Of course, I understand that that takes a lot of time and that a company may not like have like that huge of a time frame. So making smaller strides, like partnering with the Career Center, partnering with other like inclusion groups here on campus, making the space specifically for them, I think is really important. I think that another thing is offering that help. I feel like offering help to a lot of students and being able to, make yourself a little bit more accessible into understanding that some students may not have, as Emily has like stated before, may not have like those connections, and just being able to bring yourself and to be a little bit more accessible. Trojan Talks are a great way to do it. Workshops with the Career Center, making your presence known on campus as sort of like a place where we as a company are here for you to support you.
Yeah, just to like agree with that, workshops are also very helpful alongside the Q&A sessions. Like I know some employers do resume reviews with either the Career Center or the different cultural centers on campus. I think that's a great way to like help students like break the ice a little bit while like supporting their career, showing that you care, and also in the process getting to know people from your organization as well. Yeah, and definitely want to reiterate, we have a lot of organizations on campus with students looking, just like help them out, find them on campus. They're there, yeah.
I also forgot to mention the DEI recruitment event that happens at USC. So that's probably another great place for organizations to come, because students who are coming here attending this event, they already know what they want. They know what they're expecting. So this is a good place where you can actually tap into that right audience for the organization. So yeah, the DEI recruitment event is one of the, it's called Diversity Meet and Greet. So you should definitely check it out.
So thank you all for sharing. So you all have a good point in terms of players to engage with students when it comes to like DEI, meet and greet, as well as like Trojan Talks. I know most of you talked about like the career fair to attend like in person, just to get to know students a little bit better, as well as workshops and attending like cultural centers events that they host. I think that's very important as well. So I do appreciate for you all in sharing. And then so we're gonna open up for Q&A. So if any of you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself. Or if not, you can also put it in the chat if you have any questions. So we're gonna open up for Q&A.
I don't have a question, but is it okay to share a comment? So thank you all so much for your answers here. This was really helpful because, I'm a recruiter, and in our role, it's great because we get to interact with students. We go to career fairs and we get to, talk to the people who hopefully will end up joining the company. But there is, limitations as individual contributors. Like we're employees too, so we have certain things we're not able to have control over, like funding, for example. But I really appreciate though all of your different perspectives, and these questions covered a lot of different areas. So, what I'm hearing mostly from you guys is like intentional, something to show like intention towards moving in the right direction, right? You want to see from companies that they're trying. So, there's really no excuse whether, basically what I'm hearing from your answers is like, in an ideal world, like there's these programs and funding, and that stuff is great too. But even for smaller companies, like just getting started, there's a lot of small steps we can take to move in the right direction. Like, so for example, at IntelliSense, we're a small company, but we do lunch and learns every month. And you guys gave me this idea, like we could do a DE&I lunch and learn, and we could invite some employees to share their perspectives. So that's like a free thing that we can do to just show that we are committed to amplifying diverse voices. So I really appreciate all the different ideas, because it's not just one solution, I think.
Thanks, Mariah. I work with Mariah. I'm also a recruiter here at IntelliSense. And something I wanted to comment on was something that Alex said, which I think is really important. And you asked about well, why am I getting hired? Is it because I'm checking off a diversity box, whether it's transgender, it's your race, it's a disability, any of these little boxes. And for us at Intellisense, we interview everyone and we hire based on skill set. And if you happen to check off those boxes, then that's a bonus for us. But we don't hire based on DEI initiatives or like checking off a box, because if we do hire that way, and then let's say 6 months or a year from now, we have to continuously let people who's checking off those boxes go, it looks really bad for the company. So we always hire with the intention of hiring people who have the right technical skill set and who's a fit for the company.
Thank you so much, Mariah. And sorry, how do you pronounce your name? Shanine?
It's Channing, like Channing Tatum.
Okay. Thank you so much for the insight for the panelists. I think it's very important for you all to let us know how you felt when students were asking their answers, giving their answers. And then are there any more questions you would like to ask to the panelists? If there's any questions you would like to ask. Okay, so if there's not any more questions, if not, thank you all for joining us today, and this concludes our panel for today.